Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Good. Good afternoon. As a government official, my job is to make sure that everybody falls asleep in the next 15 minutes which I speak. I hope to refute those expectations and to carry on in the next 15 minutes to show you why, under the assumption that the government should be the enemy or the obstacle for innovation, we are rather trying to be your friend. And I'll just start with some general notes that Albert Einstein says we can't solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And just a very short story to illustrate what we mean here is there was this dog who decided to take a vacation in Africa through the safari. And he went on the safari tour and suddenly encounters a tiger. And the tiger started chasing the dog. And the dog is running away from the tiger because the dog doesn't want to get eaten. And then he suddenly sees there are bones on the ground. So he picks one of the bones and he holds it in his mouth and he's with his back to the tiger. The tiger stops, asking himself what's going on. And then the dog starts mumbling to himself, that was a very tasty tiger. It was a very good lunch. So the tiger starts rethinking, well, maybe this dog is crazy, I'll run away. There was a monkey on the tree looking at all that and then just running and chasing the tiger and telling to the tiger, what are you, an idiot? He was laughing at you. The bones were there the whole time. The dog was playing with you. So now we have the monkey riding on the tiger, chasing the dog again. And the dog is running. And then suddenly the dog stops again. And the dog goes, well, the hell is that monkey? I sent him 30 minutes ago to find me another tiger. Now, I think that dog also knew Paris when he said, when you have two alternatives, the first thing you have to do is to look for the third that you didn't think about, that doesn't exist. And I think we as government, for many years, we can always say what can be done, what's not competitive, what is antitrust. Our role, I'll just wait for the train a second. Our role as government is to try to see today, with the changes in the world, how we become enablers instead of obstacles. So when we look at Israel and the environment and we start asking ourselves as the finance ministry, what is the engine of growth? What is the major catalyst for our growth? Where we have our added value, where we have our competitive edge. So we are number one at research and R&D per capita. We are number two in venture capital investment per capita. We are number three in business entrepreneurship per capita. And number four in most innovative country. It's even more interesting to see what those people think of us, where it's Warren Buffett, where it's Google, where it's Oracle, whether it's Intel, where it's Microsoft or Hutchison. All those large enterprises are investing in Israel, and they are investing in Israel because of its talent, because of its experience, because of its innovation, and because of its entrepreneurial spirit. And we as government have to think, well, how do we preserve that? How do we train the next generation of engineers? How do we train the next generation of talents, and where that next generation of talent is going? Now, also when we look at the number of companies that operate in Israel, whether it's internet, communication, enterprise, semiconductors, medical, energy and water, we have the top companies operating, investing, doing their R&D in Israel. There actually should be another box, they're talking about cyber. We are 0.1% of the Israeli population, but more than 15% of cyber investment are done in Israel. That's 150 times our size. That's remarkable for Israel. And this is all done in spite of the government. This is all done mostly by the private sector and the talent in the private sectors and investors within Israel and outside Israel that have developed that market. Now, also, when we look, where is the place for startups outside the US? Israel is number one outside the US. Number one, when you look at the list. And we have, where we really excel is with talents and funding and performance. Here is where we have our competitive edge. Now, when we talk about performance and talent, performance had to lead also to what is the taxation policy that we have, we'll discuss later, and also the talent, how do we train, how do we bring the skills to the young people that will be the next generation in that market. Now, also, if we look at the investment success stories, we see rapidly exits and capital raising being raised from 2013 from between 6 to 7. In 2016, it was already 9. I can tell you now that in 2017, it will be more than 11. And this rapidly grows and grows and grows and continue. And this is a real success story. And you can look at some of the IPOs that were done in 2014, 2015. And it's really a remarkable story. But why is our technology so flourishing? Why is Israel so innovative? So when we start to look at the figures, we are the home for 230,000 engineers. okay, with more than 39% of them working in R&D. This is where we have our competitive edge. We have an entrepreneurial spirit. We are a groundbreaking research innovating center in almost every field. I mean, if you go to Beersheba today and you see what is done here in the cyber city, some people say it's the Silicon City for cyber today in Israel. And the IDF. 20 years ago when I joined the IDF, was more prestige to go there in an elite combat unit, which I myself joined as well. Today, people start to ask themselves, should they go to the Navy SEALs or should they go to the technological cyber units of the military? Who contributes more to the security of Israel? A guy who does cyber counterattack or a guy who serves in the Navy SEALs? It's a very good question. And excellence in academics. Israel is one of the leading academic places in the world. We have places like the Technion, we have places like Hebrew U and other universities who are leading in the fields of engineering. But when you look at vocational training and professional training for technicians and basic engineers, this is where we as government today have to put the attention, when the market is going to go, where employment is going to go. Ask yourself today, when you go to universities, how many of the degrees today taught in universities are relevant to the future market employment? How many lawyers do we need more? How many accountants do we need more? How many people who are studying general history, human resources, are going to be used or needed in the next 20, 30 years? And ask yourself how many technological hands we will need in the next 20, 30 years. And how do we train those? And when you go through the syllabus today of the academics in the universities, ask yourself how many of those actually fit the future needs of the employment market in Israel and in anywhere else. It's a concern not just to us. Today in Israel, we have 10,000 people, almost 140 engineers, where in the United States, just relatively speaking, it's less than half of that. But is that sustainable over time? And are we doing the utmost that we can as government to make sure that we train as many engineers, as many technicians, and many basic engineers as we need and as the market will need in the future? And now I want to take you to the reform that Nimrod was speaking about earlier on. When we started to look at the situation today, and this is specifically when we look at taxation, we saw that today what happens in Israel is a lot of the companies are doing their R&D in Israel. They're developing companies like Mobileye, companies like Waze, companies in the past like ICQ, Converse, etc., endless number of companies. But a lot of them don't write their IP in Israel. Now, as investors in high-tech, or people who deal with high-tech, you know that most of the valuation goes to the IP, to nothing else. And they don't do it because the taxation regime in Israel was not competitive compared to many other countries. Now then came the BEPS, and the new BEPS regulation came and said, well, if in the past you could have done your R&D in one place and your IP in another place and have some kind of a cost-plus model, this is not sustainable anymore. In the future, what you will need to do is to adjust. You can't look for tax shelter countries anymore. You will need to write your IP in the same country that you do your R&D. And this became as a large opportunity for Israel. And we sat down as government last year, started to think, well, what are the changes we need to make in order to be very competitive and to make sure that not only startup starts in Israel, and we start an idea like Mobileye or ICQ or Waze or Converse or any other company or Amdocs for that instance, but how do we make multinational companies who have to start asking themselves today, well, I have my IP written in the Cayman Islands or in Singapore or in Ireland, and I'm doing my R&D, I don't know, in the States or maybe in Israel or in any other place in Europe, and now I have to change that because of the new BEPS regulation. Where am I going to go? And we wanted everybody to think, well, Israel is actually a very, very good place for you to go because you will have the talent, you'll have the ecosystem, you'll have the technology there, and we'll also provide, you have the engineers, and we'll also provide you with the right tax regime. And Israel was the first country in the world, actually, to legislate a new regime for taxation for IP-oriented companies, which brought down taxation drastically. So we're looking today as corporate tax for large corporations between 6 to 12%. If you're more than 2.5 billion global turnover, which is more than 5,000, 10,000 companies in the world who actually carry that, you pay 6% corporate tax. You'll pay dividend tax of 4%, and you'll pay capital gain tax of 6%, which means if you come to Israel and you stay in Israel, we don't bear hug you. We don't make you stay. If you want to go and leave, you'll pay your 6% capital gains and you can go out and you can leave. Come and check, examine the environment, and the ecosystem that we have, and then decide if you want to stay or not. We said there's no ruling required, and we also gave an 8 years of tax amortization, and we also gave a stability clause. One of the claims that I always hear when I go abroad is that after everything that happened with the gas and Noble Energy, how can we sign the contract with the Israeli government? I mean, you sign the contract, Noble Energy signed the contract with you, people start drilling for gas, and then you change the contract again and again and again and again and again. And even if this is right, and you legislate that now, what ensures us that in 2 years or 3 years' time when the government changes, that doesn't go away? And those percentages changes. So what we've done is we actually made sure we bypass that, and we made a stability clause giving 3 major officials in Israel the ability to sign a contract with any company that will come to Israel to make sure that their taxation doesn't change over the next 10 years. And I can tell you that today we are discussing with 3 major companies that are looking to come into Israel, and we hope that in the next month or so we will announce the first one that's going to bring their IP into Israel. I won't go through all the grants because my time is almost over, but there are many other grants that we give. Either it's investment in equipment, investment in buildings, grants for R&D, grants for human powers and employees, specifically if you do it and you put your factories or you do your R&D in the Israeli periphery, various R&D grants. But the last thing I want to tell you, and I'll finish it up also with a very, very, very short story, of why things have changed. The son comes to his parents and he asks his father, "Father, can you please tell me what politics is?" So the father looks to the son and says, "Well, my child, let me explain you. Politics is the following situation. Take mom, she's the parliament. She sets up the rules in the house. Take me, I'm the government. I execute whatever mom says. Take the nanny, she's the economy. She takes care of the house and everything here. Take you, you're the people. Everything is done for you. All this market is oriented for you. And take your little brother, he's the future." Well, with those insights, the son goes to sleep. At night, his little brother is pooing in his diaper and he starts crying. So the son wakes up, he goes up, and he goes to his parents' door. He opens the door, he only sees mom. He calls up, "Mom, mom, mom." Mom doesn't wake up. So as he's about to go to sleep, he sees there's a light at the attic. So he walks up at the attic, and he sees his father and the nanny doing what they're doing. So he goes back to bed, and he goes to sleep. Next morning, he wakes up, the family is having a very beautiful breakfast, and the father says, "Well, my dear son, do you remember our conversation yesterday about politics?" Son goes, "Of course I remember." He says, "Well, can you explain to me what is politics?" He says, "Yeah, Dad, I can explain it to you. Politics is a situation where the people are crying out." Is it out? Oh, sorry. So he says, well, politics is a situation when the people are crying out, the parliament is sleeping, the government is busy F-wording the economy, and this is all done while the future is filled with poo. So what we are trying to do today is actually make sure that when you come and you approach the Israeli government to try to see what are your terms, instead of going through every single one of those authorities, whether it's the Population and Immigration Authority, Investment Center, Israeli Tax Authority, the Directory of Employment and Regulation, Office of the Chief of Scientists, we will make sure you have one-stop shop. Because like the dog in the beginning of our story, our mission as government is to think differently of how we become enabler to push investments to come into Israel and to make sure that ecosystem, which I showed you in the beginning that started, if I'll be here in 2 or 3 times to show you the figures, they'll double or triple. Thank you very much.